Patrick Henry is perhaps the most underestimated man of his generation. His talents as a public speaker were summed up by Thomas Jefferson: "The greatest orator that ever lived, such as I have never heard from any other man." But Patrick Henry was more than a dynamic speaker. He was also a great intellect and statesman. Judge Spencer Roane wrote, "His genius was far soaring above that of ordinary men." Born in Virginia, of Scottish and English descent, Patrick Henry loved hunting and fishing and the out-of-doors. Through his father's diligent efforts and studying at home, as a teenager he acquired a knowledge of Greek, Latin, and the classics, as well as the Bible. Patrick decided to become a lawyer when he was 24 years old. 5 years later, he was elected to the Virginia House of Burgesses, Virginia's colonial government. Within days, the Burgesses were notified that the British Parliament had passed the Stamp Act, an act designed to tax the colonies for all legal documents. Rigorous debate ensued. The colonists were angry with this unfair surtax. During those debates, Patrick Henry spoke against the crown and was threatened with treason. Later he wrote about the Stamp Act resolves, "This brought on the war which finally separated the two countries and gave independence to ours. Whether this will prove a blessing or a curse will depend upon the use our people make of the blessings which a gracious God has bestowed on us." God-given liberty was the touchstone of Patrick Henry's philosophy. He believed that liberty was the condition in which God created man, and liberty is the condition in which man is best able to respond to God. It appeared that if the Americans were to have their liberty, they would have to pay for it with their lives. In October of '74, His Majesty sent regiments to Massachusetts. The chief port of Boston was closed, and the city was garrisoned, and other liberties suspended. People had been killed. Tempers were rising. At the same time, orders were out that certain Americans be brought to trial in England for treason. Henry was one of them, a wanted man. If convicted of treason, his fate would be harsh and grotesque. "You will be hanged by the neck, but not until dead. While still living, you'll be taken down and disemboweled. Then your head will be cut off and your body divided into 4 quarters, which are then put at the king's disposal. God have mercy on your soul." In the face of this terrible possibility, other clouds were rising. Early in '75, the bride of his youth, Sarah, died after a protracted mental illness. He was devastated, just at the time when he had to gird himself for the critical battle on the convention floor. A lesser man would have crumbled, but Patrick Henry pressed on. The largest building in Richmond, Virginia, St. John's Church, was chosen for the Virginia Convention. It was a mild March day as the delegates assembled at the parish church, 120 men in all, with some of Virginia's greatest men, including Washington, Jefferson, and Richard Henry Lee. Many of the delegates hoped that nothing would seriously disturb the status quo. They did not want a fight with England. The session was called to order at 10 a.m. by the stout, dignified Peyton Randolph. The Reverend Mr. Sheldon read the prayer for the king, which was not without irony. The minutes of the previous day were read and approved. Then, a resolution was offered that encouraged the colonists to continue to petition the British ministry. They wanted to hold on and try to work things out. Henry was beside himself. After angered debate, he offered an amendment that proposed just the opposite. He wanted an established militia and a resolution that Virginia be immediately put into a state of defense, and that a committee prepare a plan for setting up, arming, and disciplining enough soldiers for that purpose. He wanted war. The fireworks began between those who were ready to fight and those who wanted to make peace with England. Arguments passed back and forth, back and forth. Tension was high. It was a time of decision. Patrick Henry took the floor with an unusual majesty.
Mr. President, no man thinks more highly than I do of the patriotism as well as abilities of the very worthy gentlemen who have just addressed this House. But different men often see the same subjects in different lights. Therefore, I hope it will not be thought disrespectful to those gentlemen, since I have an opposite opinion, that I shall speak forth my sentiments freely and without reserve. This is no time for ceremony. The question before the House is one of crisis for this country. For my own part, I consider it as nothing less than a question of freedom or slavery. And considering the magnitude of the subject, we need to be able to speak freely. It is only in this way that we can hope to arrive at truth and fulfill the great responsibility which we hold to God and our country. If I kept back my opinions at such a time through fear of being offensive, I would have to consider myself guilty of treason toward my country and disloyal to the majesty of heaven, which I revere above all earthly things. Mr. President, it's natural for people to hope that things will get better. It's normal for us to shut our eyes to the painful truth and turn our heads until we find ourselves rendered helpless. But is this the choice of wise men engaged in a struggle for liberty? For my part, however difficult it may be, I'm willing to know the whole truth, to know the worst and be prepared for it. I have but one lamp by which my feet are guided, the lamp of experience. I know of no way of judging the future but by the past. And judging by the past, I wish to know what conduct by the British ministry over the last 10 years justifies the hope of these gentlemen who hold out for reconciliation. Is it the insidious smile that the Parliament holds while reading our hopeful petitions? Trust it not, sir. Don't be betrayed by a kiss. You think our petitions have been received graciously? If so, then why do they cover our waters and darken our land with warlike preparations? Are fleets and armies necessary to a work of love and reconciliation? Have we appeared so unwilling to be reconciled that force must be called in to win back our love? Let us not deceive ourselves. These are the implements of war and subjugation, the last arguments to which kings resort. I ask, gentlemen, sir, what's the purpose of this show of power if not to force us into submission? Can there be any other motive? Does Great Britain have any enemy in this part of the world which justifies this accumulation of military strength? No, sir. She has none. They are meant for us. They are sent over to bind and rivet upon us those chains which the British ministry have been so long in forging. And what have we to oppose them? Shall we try argument? Sir, we have been trying that for the last 10 years. Have we anything new to offer on the subject? Nothing. We have held the subject up in every light of which it is capable, but it has been all in vain. Shall we keep trying to arrange meetings and humble negotiations? Let us not, I beg you, sir, deceive ourselves longer. We have done everything that could be done to avert the storm which is now coming on. We have petitioned. We have pleaded in protest. We have made humble and earnest appeal. And we have prostrated ourselves before the tyrannical hands of the ministry and Parliament. Our petitions have been slighted. Our pleadings have produced additional violence and insult. Our humble appeals have been disregarded. And we have been spurned with contempt from the foot of the throne. It's in vain to extenuate the matter. There is no longer room for hope. If we wish to be free, if we intend to preserve our rights and liberties, if we mean to not cowardly abandon the noble struggle in which we have been so long engaged, and which we have pledged ourselves never to abandon until the glorious object of our contest shall be obtained, we must fight. I repeat it, sir, we must fight. A call to arms and to the God of hosts is all that is left us. They tell us, sir, that we're weak, unable to cope with so formidable an adversary. But when will we be stronger? Will it be next week? Or the next year? Will it be when we are totally disarmed and when a British guard shall be stationed in every person's home? Shall we gather strength by indecision and inactivity? Shall we resist by lying on our backs, hugging the delusive phantom of hope while our enemies tie us up hand and foot? Sir, we are not weak if we make proper use of the means which the God of nature has placed in our power. 3 million people armed in the holy cause of liberty in such a country as that which we possess are invincible by any force which our enemy can send against us. Besides, sir, we shall not fight our battles alone. There is a just God who presides over the destinies of nations and who will raise friends to fight our battles for us. The battle, sir, is not to the strong alone. It's to the brave, the vigilant, the active. Besides, we have no choice. Even if we were cowardly enough to desire it, it's now too late to back out. There is no retreat but in submission and slavery. Our chains are forged. Their clanking may be heard on the plains of Boston. The war is inevitable, and let it come. I repeat it, sir, let it come. There is no longer room for hope. Gentlemen may cry peace, peace, but there is no peace. The war is actually begun. The next gale that sweeps from the north will bring to our ears the clash of resounding arms. Our brethren are already in the field. Why stand we here idle? What is it that gentlemen wish? What would they have? Is life so dear, or peace so sweet, as to be purchased at the price of chains and slavery? Forbid it, Almighty God! I know not what course others may take, but as for me, give me liberty, or give me death!